You're starting.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to tonight's TeleTown Hall. I'm Congressman Scott Perry, and I'm looking forward to talking with you and answering your questions about issues facing our communities and nation, and just kind of generally seeing what's on your mind this evening before we get started. And while we let questions build up in the queue, let me go over the basic flow of how the TeleTown Hall works, so people get a chance to ask questions as possible. To get in the queue to ask a question, press star 3 at any time during this session. Star 3 to ask a question, get in the queue. At the end of the TeleTown Hall, if you want to keep in touch and get on my email distribution list, press star 6. That's star 6 to get on the email distribution list for our regular kind of publication and updates. Again, press star 3 to ask a question and star 6 at the end of the TeleTown to receive updates, press releases, newsletters, any notifications for events like this one that would go directly to your inbox. It's a great way to stay in touch without having to constantly check social media all the time. Speaking of social media, if you're not already following me on X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, I invite you to do so. I'm at Rep. Scott Perry on each of those platforms, Rep. Scott Perry. One last note, since this is an official legislative event, please keep in mind that I can't answer any campaign-related questions on this call. So this is all official business only, and I thank you for that. Our staff members are on the line, ready to take your questions and get you in the queue. But while we continue to let the questions build in the queue, let's do a poll question, if you would. Since Americans are required to show ID to board a plane or 50 other things, do you think they should be required to show ID to vote? If you agree with that, press 1 for yes, and if you disagree, please press 2 for no. And again, since Americans are required to show ID for a lot of things, including like getting on a plane, do you think they should be required to show ID? Now, let me start with a general legislative update just about some current events in Washington and around the world right now, as I'm sure they're likely to come up on the call anyhow. First, the war in Iran is captivating everybody's attention. I think it's important to remember how we got here. Iran has essentially been at war with the United States for 47 years since they took the hostages out of our embassy and declared war on us. And since that time, they have killed thousands of Americans, both in uniform and out of uniform, but particularly in uniform in Iraq and Afghanistan. I know those wars occurred in Iraq and Afghanistan, but I can tell you from personal experience that Iran was involved in some of the most heinous of attacks, using a thing specifically designed in Iran called an explosive form penetrator, which was a type of improvised explosive device. They were devastating to our service members and have left, as I said, thousands dead, maybe tens of thousands maimed to live the rest of their life with that. But then there's also the civilian death toll, and of course the people, literally at that point, hundreds of thousands of people that have been affected by Iran's malign terror activities, which literally cost the United States of America every single day through Iran's proxies in the region, right? But not only confined to the region, and I don't know if people know this, but they have proxies, or whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas, that operate in South and Central America too. And of course, there is great concern that some of those folks have now come to the United States and are either operating in a clandestine fashion or will reveal themselves in some kind of terror attack. And so, as you know, the president struck Iran earlier last year, their nuclear capability, but we were given information that Iran was quickly reconstituting their nuclear capability, and also at the same time constituting their ability to protect that nuclear capability through an impenetrable shield, which would disallow anybody from attacking it and disarming it without triggering it, the use of it, so to speak. So the president made the decision to to make sure that this war is finally ended and we don't have to deal with the threat of terror and nuclear war for the rest of our lives with Iran. That's how we got here. I think we're doing an outstanding job. Unfortunately, with war, there are always going to be those who are casualties of that. And of course, we have suffered some killed in action, and certainly our prayers and our thoughts go out to those service members and their families. On the other hand, or the other side of that equation, Iran has suffered devastating effects by the expertise and the precision of the United States military. And as a guy who got to wear the uniform for over 35 years, I commend our military and their actions to date. So that's what's going on in Iran, but I'm sure you might have some questions. Let's talk about the portion of our government. And again, to get in the queue, please press *3. So a portion of our government is shut down right now. What that means is that we have not approved the funding for the Department of Homeland Security. That department, or that appropriations bill, as we call it, that's where we spend your tax money on those items. Homeland Security is a category that includes the Department of Homeland Security, including Border Patrol, including Immigration and Customs Enforcement, including the Secret Service, including the Federal Emergency Management Administration, and including the Coast Guard. All those people that work in those agencies are currently working but have not been paid because Congress has not passed the funding bill. Now, when I say Congress, I include the Senate in that. And the reason I say that is because the House of Representatives, where I am as your representative, we voted to pass that funding I think 2 or 3 times now. We have voted to pass that funding. And as you know, no bill's perfect. There are things in there that I took issue with, but on balance, it was worthy of a vote, and I voted in favor of it. Unfortunately, while Republicans are in control in the Senate, it takes 60 votes to pass anything over there, and we don't have 60 Republican senators. Now, I'm happy and pleased to report that Senator Fetterman from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has voted in favor of passage of that, but unfortunately, not enough of maybe not any of his Democrat colleagues are willing to do that. So when you go to the airport and try to go through the TSA, and maybe I failed to mention that one, I just spoke to those folks last week in Harrisburg. Those are the folks that are working on the front lines to keep us safe while all this stuff around the world is happening. And so, my friends on the other side of the aisle, my colleagues there, refuse to vote for that bill. And I will tell you, generally speaking, what they want in return for their vote to fund that agency. They want essentially to strip out the ability of Immigration and Customs Enforcement to conduct law enforcement operations and to remove people in the correction in the country illegally. They want to strip the ability for them to do that. Let me see. I guess I'll just, if we got plenty in the queue, press *3 to ask a question, and we'll get to you. Oh, okay. Apparently, yeah, I need you to press *3 to ask a question and to get in the queue. Couple other things. We are waiting on the Senate to pass the SAVE Act, which we passed on numerous occasions in the House of Representatives. All that does is require proof of citizenship to register to vote. So when you registered, you would have to prove that you're eligible, and understand that that's already a requirement. If you look at a voter registration form, it already requires that. However, the states are required to enforce that. They just haven't done it, or they refuse to do it. So this would end that and require them and force them to do it under penalty. And then, of course, you would have to produce and show an identification at the time of voting to prove that you were indeed eligible to vote where you were or where you are voting. And we're looking for action in the Senate on that. Unfortunately, once again, under the normal procedure that they've used for years, it requires 60. However, there is a process by which they can pass it with a simple majority without ending the filibuster. And it is my desire and hope that they would do that. have the debate and have a vote, and let's see where everybody stands. So that's what's going on with the SAVE Act. And of course, we are meeting with Attorney General Bondi regarding the Jeffrey Epstein issue, and I'm one of the people that voted to do that because I don't think that everybody's been informed completely. Certainly, I haven't been about all the questions that we have regarding that case and where it currently stands. So we're awaiting that at this time. So I'm hoping we got some questions on the line. Again, press *3 to ask a question. And let me, just before I do that, just before I go to questions, let me ask another poll question. Do you support the war in Iran? That's pretty simple. Press 1 for yes and 2 for no. Again, do you support the war in Iran? Press 1 for yes and 2 for no. All right, I'm going to get to questions. Do we have a question on the line?
Sir, we have Aaron from Camp Hill with a question about the SAVE Act.
Hi, Aaron. Go ahead with your question, please.
So you spoke a little bit about, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. So you spoke a little bit about the SAVE Act just a moment ago. I am an unmarried woman, and so I will not have any challenges getting to vote. But all of my friends who are married women who have changed their names are going to have a distinct challenge, which I believe is going to disenfranchise them from voting. I have never had to show any kind of ID whenever I voted, and everything has been proven through this last election that everything in PA was done correctly. So I don't understand why we need to change something that is working correctly in our state, as most times we look to state government to make these decisions.
Yeah, Aaron, I appreciate the question, and I think, look, there's a lot of speculation and probably faulty information regarding the Save America Act. And while many people feel like it's adequate in Pennsylvania, we have to deal with the entire country at the federal level. And there are many states that, of course, where things aren't done correctly, and people have reservations or a trust issue with the outcome of elections, because there are millions of people now in our country illegally who do not have the right or the authority to vote, but yet still remain on the voter rolls through the motor voter program, et cetera. Now, as a single woman or a married woman, you can produce numerous forms of identification to vote. Again, you don't need your birth certificate to vote. Remember, we're just requiring citizenship to register to vote. To vote, you just need an acceptable form of identification, whether you're married or not. So that's really not a valid issue regarding proof of, being eligible to vote. If you are on the voter rolls and you can produce some kind of documentation that's acceptable that says and proves who you say you are, then you will be eligible to vote. So it's just a safeguard to make sure that ineligible people are not voting in our elections. And every single election cycle, whether it's people illegally or people that are deceased or people that have moved and are voting in multiple locations, these things continue to occur, and it erodes the confidence in our system. So I think that there's just a little bit of speculation and misinformation about what's actually required here, and so whatever will suffice for most other things that you would do where you require identification will suffice under these new conditions that have been proposed. And I appreciate the question, Aaron. Again, press *3 if you want to get in the queue. Can we get the next question, please?
Sir, we have Christina from Harrisburg who has a question on ICE. Okay,
Christina, go ahead. What's your question? Christina, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here. My question is, what are your plans moving forward to help Pennsylvanians, specifically your constituents, against having their rights infringed upon by ICE agents?
Well, I would say this: if there is someone in any law enforcement agency, now of course I don't have any control over your local law enforcement, whether it's a township or the state police or even your sheriff's office, but if it does have to do with federal and law enforcement, so that includes things like immigration and customs enforcement, the Secret Service. There's a federal protection force associated with Homeland Security. Anything in the federal realm, if anybody that is a sworn officer working in that arena that has violated anybody's civil rights, we're going to take issue with that, right? I mean, I'm not a court of law, but we're certainly going to demand accountability for anybody that abuses their authority. But just like our local police or even our state police, we want to make sure that the law is being enforced, and we want to make sure that everybody in the community, including the law enforcement officers, which I fully support, have the tools that they need to safely prosecute the law, so to speak, or uphold the law. And one of the problems that we have is that some of our municipalities have harbored and made it easy for criminals, including criminal aliens, to thwart the law. When our local jurisdictions aid in that, it's safer for everybody. It's safer for the community. It's safer for the suspected perpetrator, and it's certainly safer for law enforcement. And when I say that, what I mean is that when one of these individuals is arrested on some other crime and is held in jail, and they're found out to be here illegally, if our local law enforcement jurisdiction would just inform the federal authorities, then the federal authorities can pick them up at the incarceration facility or the jail, so to speak, without any fanfare, without chasing them down the street, without putting anybody in jeopardy. But when they're let out on the street and then Immigration and Customs Enforcement have to go find somebody that's committed a violent crime that is now out on the street as opposed to in the jail, then their lives are in jeopardy, their safety's in jeopardy, and so is everybody else in the community, which is what we're trying to avoid. If anybody abuses their authority, whether it's local law enforcement or federal, there are remedies for that, and there should be accountability for that, and we'll certainly call for that if that is the case. But we want to do this as safely as we can, but we also want to make sure that people that are committing crimes aren't free to roam the streets and prey upon our citizens, and we want to make sure that law enforcement has every tool to do that safely and efficiently and effectively. Appreciate the question, Christine. Again, dial *3 to ask a question. Next question, please.
Sir, we have Carl from Carlisle with a question on the SAVE Act.
Hey, Carl.
Hey, I am here. I heard your answer about the SAVE Act a minute ago. So let me ask something different. Dan Goldman went on the floor today and revealed that Pam Bondi's been covering up Trump's connection to Jeff Epstein when he released that unredacted report that shows that Trump lied and he was never kicked out of Mar-a-Lago. Will you pursue Donald Trump if he is in fact a pedophile? Will you hold him accountable, sir?
We'll hold anybody, and I will hold anybody accountable if they're proven to be a pedophile. But what I'm not going to do is destroy somebody's reputation based on some claim made on the House floor by, Mr. Goldman or anybody else. If he's got evidence, then I'm happy to see it, and we'll be meeting with the Attorney General for things just like that. But at this moment, and I will tell you, maybe I missed something on the floor, so if Representative Goldman provided evidence, I didn't see it, and I'll apologize for that. But yes, anybody, I don't care who you are, if you're a pedophile, you need to be prosecuted, and there is no statute of limitations on that, but it requires evidence, not just specious claims by someone, quite honestly, like Mr. Goldman, who obviously is not in favor of Mr. Trump. So let's make sure that everybody in our society, and I mean everybody, is innocent until proven guilty, and is given the benefit of their constitutional rights. Nobody's above the law, but nobody's beneath it either, just because someone claims so. So that's my answer on that, Carl, and I mean that. If there's evidence, then let's go. But we're not going to destroy people's lives based on claims without evidence. Okay, press *3 if you've got a question. Next caller, please.
Sir, we have Andrew from Mechanicsburg with a question on data centers.
Hello, Mr.
Okay,
Perry.
Andrew, go ahead.
Hi. As you're likely aware, there's currently an ongoing plan to build a large data center campus in Middlesex in a wild area near the Appalachian Trail. Do you have any plans on using your position to protect hunting, just general hiking areas like that, like the trail, from effects of these developments? And what are your opinions on previous GOP attempts to sell public lands for similar projects like mining?
Okay, so public lands, we'll start with the last thing first. Public lands belong to the public, but they're also used oftentimes for people live on public lands, believe it or not. They ranch on public lands or farm on public lands. We also extract resources from public lands like mining, natural gas, oil production. All those things have been happening since public lands were available in our country, and I think they should continue to happen. This is our country, and as long as they're done safely, effectively, and appropriately, I don't see any reason why we should not avail ourselves as a country to our own natural resources. Regarding the Appalachian Trail and the data center, obviously the data center, I would hope, is not being built on the Appalachian Trail, and I don't think you're making that claim, just to be clear. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if it is being built on the Appalachian Trail, obviously I would have something to say about that. But if it's private land handled by the municipality, I'm a federal legislator. I don't make decisions on zoning or particular buildings, whether it's in your township or in the city of Harrisburg or anywhere else. Those are local development decisions by your local elected officials. And so I just hope that it would be done appropriately and with the approval of your local elected officials who speak on your behalf and behalf of the municipality where you reside. And of course, as a guy who served in that capacity in the past, that's a tough job to do. It's hard to please everybody. Landowners own their land, and they want to use it as they see fit, whether it's farming, whether they want to just let it sit there and remain woodland, or whether they want to develop it. And sometimes we don't necessarily agree, but it's not our land, and we want to do what we want with the land that we live on, whether it's build a house or, maybe we want to use it for something else, but that's our choice. And that's a little bit of a struggle in America. So I am aware of the data centers, but unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe is a better way to put it, that's not necessarily a federal issue where they cite it and maybe what the size of it is or what the current land use is. Those are local zoning issues and local governance for your local township or a political enclave. That's issues for them to decide, and of course, you elect those officials. So, Andrew, I hope that answers your question. And again, press *3 if you have another question, and we'll get you in the queue.
Sir, we have a question from Mark from Camp Hill with a question on Iran.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Hi, Congressman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, first quick update. Lehigh is leading Prairie View 29-27 at the House, so I'm happy about that.
Okay.
Second, I want to thank you for your service to our country in the military. My dad was an infantry sergeant in World War II. And my question for you concerns the Iran war. I agree with your opening statement about the damage that our military has inflicted upon Iran, but I think the president made at least two mistakes that I can see. One, I think he really felt that our allies were going to come help us, and they've all said no so far. And I really thought that the Iranians wouldn't fight as much as they are willing to, and I think the Iranians. My question is, how do we exit this war so the president saves face? I think those two things have to be going on, because I think the president doesn't want to be humiliated on the world stage like this. And the other is not just about the rising gas prices, Congressman. I heard that about a third of the world's fertilizer comes through the Strait of Hormuz. And so it's not just going to be gas that's spiking, but it's going to be the price of groceries that are spiking. And I don't want that to happen. Gas is already getting more and more expensive. I think I heard on the ABC World News tonight that it's up 94 cents a gallon since the war began. What advice would you give to the president? You have seen that with his eye.
Well, look, I appreciate your question, Mark, and I thank you for mentioning your father's service. We stand all as Americans on his shoulders, and we sure appreciate his sacrifice in that regard. I don't think it's about saving face for the president. I think I also don't think that the president really expected a lot of allies to come in and help out with the Straits of Hormuz. And the reason I say that is because of his public statements where he said he didn't really expect them to, but he wanted to ask them in public so everybody could see that after 50 years of taking care of the security of many of these nations, when America finally asked for something, they weren't really interested in helping out. And understand, that their economies are also affected by what goes in and what comes out of the Straits of Hormuz as well. So they have a vested interest, but they're happy to let America essentially carry the freight and do all the tough work to end this 47-year war with the terrorist state of Iran. But I don't think it's really about saving face either. I think that the as I understand it and the briefings I've got, the operation, the military, what I would call the kinetic portion of the military campaign, is ahead of schedule, and there are very clearly defined goals for this operation, most notably to destroy indefinitely the ability of Iran's nuclear capability and also their ballistic missile capability, which would protect their nuclear capability, but essentially their overall ability to conduct military operations anywhere in the region. And I think that is hitting kind of what we're seeing is, the cusp or the start of the next phase of that. I think this is going to be a very limited period of time, and once the straits are protected and commerce can freely flow, and I agree with your assessment regarding fertilizer. We've gotten briefs on that, and as a matter of fact, the president has already taken actions to reduce the cost of fertilizer by suspending some of the regulatory requirements in America that make it more expensive. And I think that once the straits are reopened and we get more to what we would call a steady state, where Iran's military has been completely decimated, and their ability to make war, even though they have this mosaic command structure, which means they will still be a bellicose nation, at least individual province by individual province, their ability to project that power outward from Iran will be very limited to non-existent. I think you will see the price of gasoline rapidly drop and things get generally back to normal, or maybe even in a better position, since there's likely an opportunity for somebody that's not a terrorist organization to control the flow of oil, not only through the Straits of Hormuz, but out of Iran itself, which, as you know, probably produces about 10% of the world's oil, of which 20% travels through the straits there. So what that can be, once that's adjudicated and dealt with appropriately, I think that will end pretty rapidly, and we'll see what we would generally call a return to normalcy in the prices for fuel and anything else that affects. And I would agree with you that fuel affects almost everything, and certainly I have the same concerns you do. I'm driving a car too. I'm paying the same high gas prices, and I don't like it any more than you or anyone else does. So I stand right beside you and hoping that this operation is culminated very quickly. And I hope I answered all your questions, Mark. Thank you. Again, press *3 if you have a question. And who's next in the queue, please?
Sir, we have Noah from Dillsburg with another question about Iran.
Okay, Noah, go ahead.
I was listening to your opening statement where you said that we went to war to stop Iran's ability, that they were spinning back up their nuclear program and then building a dome over it. Yet I was watching a hearing today with Tulsi Gabbard and the director of the CIA, and they were pretty clear on the fact that we, according to them, obliterated Iran's nuclear ability a while back, and with the last attack, and then said that they were not. That there was no evidence that they were spinning that back up, or they were moving forward with that. So I'm just wondering who's telling the truth. Is the CIA and the Director of Intelligence telling the truth about that and hearing, or are you telling the truth about that when you say that's the reason we went to war?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable question, and I will tell you, Noah, I didn't get to see the Senate hearing. I wasn't involved in that today, so I didn't get to see any of those answers. But I would tell you this: I've been in numerous briefings on Iran since the operation started, and that would contravene directly from the CIA, which would be John Radcliffe, or the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard. That would directly contravail their direct statements to us as recently as yesterday. So I'm not sure if I heard incorrectly or you heard incorrectly, or it's being just incorrectly characterized, but that's not the information that I have. So I'm giving you the information I have based on the briefings I've gotten, and that's the best I can do. I don't have, I haven't been to Iran since this started. I can't verify anything other than what's been briefed to me by the very same people that you just mentioned. So I'm just telling you what I've heard and what I understand to be the truth. All right, Noah, thank you. Again, *3 if you have a question, and we'll go to the next caller, please.
Sir, we have Mark from Dover with a question on the Save America Act.
Okay, Mark, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I know we don't have the votes in the Senate to get it passed, but what can we do before this upcoming election to get our voter rolls cleaned up from the illegal immigrants, dead people that are still casting ballots somehow, and to get rid of the ballot boxes that are invalid?
Okay, Mark, let me just I think clarify one of the first statements you made, that you said we don't have the votes in the Senate to pass the Save America Act. I don't think that that's technically true. I think there are already enough co-sponsors of that bill, if it were to come to the floor under a majority scenario, that it would pass. However, if you're talking about using the old methodology of voting for cloture and getting to 60, you're correct. But my point is that there is a methodology without getting rid of the filibuster where the Senate could debate this and pass it with 51 votes. And I'm hopeful that they will do that. So first of all, I do think that we have the votes if the Senate is willing to conduct a real debate and have the vote as they used to do prior to the 1970s. That having been said, look, the state generally controls our elections under the current set of rules by the federal government in cooperation with the state government, and we have to count on our governor and our legislature to make any changes or to do anything to execute the laws that we currently have. Now, I take issue with some of them. As I understand it, Act 77, and I wasn't, I'm not a state legislator. I wasn't there to vote for it. And so, but it's my understanding that it didn't include things like drop boxes for mail-in ballots, which quite honestly, I find somewhat curious to say the least, because if it's a mail-in ballot, I don't know why you need a drop box. You can just put it in the mail, and most homes have a mailbox at their home, or there are mailboxes around your home, public mailboxes, or a post office. You don't need to drive to a so-called drop box to do that, and I don't think that was ever envisioned in the legislation. I think that's a creation of the courts after the fact, and I take some issue with that. But bottom line is it's going to take the willingness of our governor in the Commonwealth to make any changes and to make sure that that the right people that are authorized to vote as citizens of the United States, as people alive in their own districts, to be able to do that and to clean up those rolls if there are indeed any problems. I do know that the system that has been used for years and years in Pennsylvania's elections under former Auditor General Eugene D. Pasquale were determined to be completely ineffective and unauditable, unfortunately, and there were horrific problems with that what's called the SURE system. I don't think anything meaningful has ever been done to address that recent audit by the governor or the legislature. So unfortunately, unless something changes, we're going to be dealing with that archaic system, which has been and look, I know Eugene. I served with him in the state house. We're on friendly terms, even though he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican. I'm just citing the report that he made when he was the Auditor General. So it's not a partisan thing. It's just a systematic thing that probably, well, obviously not probably, needs to be addressed. I just can't say that it has been as a state, as a federal legislator. But I appreciate the question, Mark, from Dover. All right, star 3 to get in the queue. Next question, please.
Here we have Aaron from Carlisle with a question on health insurance.
Okay, Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I work at a small business, and I pay personally almost $5,000 out of my pocket each year for a pretty bare minimum health insurance through Penny. My employer of 3 employees is being quoted currently $40,000 to $60,000 for employee health insurance. I want to know what's being done to bring down these unaffordable costs for Americans.
Yeah, Aaron, it's an appropriate question. We have passed some relief in the House of Representatives. It's not enough for me. We want to see real functional change. Unfortunately, as I've been told, they can get nothing through the Senate on health care. I think that we're setting ourselves up in the House to take another kind of swing at it. What we would like to do is infuse into the system the opportunity for you to choose your own insurance off of or away from the government mandated requirements, so that you could get exactly what you want, and so that the subsidy, so to speak, for the government mandated insurance would go, instead of to the insurance companies, directly to you, the individual insurance purchaser, so that you could use them to defray your cost and then pick the things that you want, so that you had an alternative, so to speak, free market alternative, which currently doesn't exist right now. Like I said, we passed it. Look, I will be truthful with you. It was not what I would consider transformational, what we passed in the House earlier this year, but it was better than what we have now, and it was a step in the right direction. Again, when I talked to my Senate colleagues, they said they can get nothing through the Senate at this time. So we're going to take, like I said, another crack at it here, I think, as we get into the later spring and into the summer, and hopefully the Senate will find some way to work together with us to come up with some reasonable solution to what we have now. Understand, the Obamacare, if you want to call it that, the Affordable Care Act, is heavily subsidized, and it was subsidized even further during the pandemic. And those were supposed to be temporary subsidies. Those subsidies went directly to insurance companies, and the insurance companies, of course, would like to continue to receive those subsidies. Unfortunately, your prices don't come down when they are subsidized. As a matter of fact, I think due to, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, less than 6% of your premium is due to those subsidies. So the point I'm trying to make to you, which I know is of little solace, Aaron, is that those prices were going up via your insurance company, regardless of what we did with the subsidy to the insurance company, which is why we'd like to see that money go directly to you, as opposed to sending it, to the insurers, who are not going to are not going to return it either in lower premiums for you or, a direct cost reduction to you. So there'll be more to follow on that, I hope. And I certainly understand your circumstances. And just to let everybody know, of all the federal agencies, I think this is an important point because there's a lot of information that's incorrect out kind of on the public and public discourses. Of all the federal agencies you can think of, there is only one. There is only one that is bound by the Affordable Care Act, or what's formerly known as Obamacare, and that is the federal legislature, particularly the House of Representatives, because the Senate did exempt itself from that to some great extent. So the House of Representatives is the one that is essentially right in the same boat with our constituents. Like I said, I know that's a little solace when you can't afford to pay these bills, which are indeed outrageous, but I thought that's an important point to make. And thank you for the question, Aaron. Okay, *3 to get in the queue. Next question, please.
Sir, we have Teresa from Boiling Springs with a question on the shutdown.
Okay. Teresa from Boiling Springs, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you. I had a question about what is being done to permanently protect the salaries of frontline workers that you mentioned, TSA, Coast Guard, and others, to protect their salaries permanently and remove them from being connected to this funding battle, these funding battles that continue to come up regularly. My husband's retired military, and all 4 of our kids are active duty military, and it impacts them at times as well.
Yeah, and thank you. God bless you for your sacrifices on our behalf. Thank you and your entire family, Teresa, for your service. There's actually a couple proposals that we have tried to link to any funding bills moving forward, which one, for instance, the No Shutdown Act which would continue to pay these critical and what we deem as essential employees. And I say essential because obviously Coast Guard's still out there, TSA employees are still at the airport, Secret Service employees are still working, FEMA employees are still working, disaster, to continue to pay them through these shutdowns so that it takes away the leverage of the political leverage of doing that. Unfortunately, we have not had the opportunity in the House to vote on that. It gets stripped out as these what we call must-pass bills come to the floor. And the same thing, even though we've tried to negotiate it in the Senate, has been stripped out of the Senate as the bill finally gets to a point of voting. So we haven't had an opportunity to vote. And there's a couple versions of it. I would particularly, if you want to look them up, just turn your attention and point you in the direction of Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. He's got a couple versions of those, and those are the ones we normally try and the No Shutdown Act is the one that comes to mind, but there's a couple different versions of them. There's one that just continues the government funding at the same level for 30 days so that every 30 days we kind of reset the clock again to take the political leverage away. But we can't seem to get a vote on either one. And I will tell you, ahead of time, just in case you're wondering, if those are, there's an opportunity to vote on those, I will vote in favor of them. We just haven't had the opportunity. But you're not the only one that's thought of it. And of course, like I said, I had a discussion with the TSA personnel at Harrisburg International just last week, and certainly they expressed their displeasure. But again, their member of Congress voted for it, and also did their 2 United States senators. So at this moment, the problem is not here with their members in the House and the Senate. So, but I appreciate your concern, and I think it's valid, Teresa. Thank you very much for the call. *3 to get in the queue. Next call, please.
Sir, we have James from Carlisle with a general question about contact.
Okay, James, go ahead.
I am interested in getting an appointment with one of your...
Go ahead, sir. I'm listening. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I hear you now. I didn't hear you there for a while. I don't know if I cut out or you cut. I couldn't hear you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. I'm having a problem with Arlington Cemetery. My wife's going to be buried there in a couple months. And, of course, I'm not going to be buried in the grave until I finally die. But what they won't do is they won't accept my Silver Star because I don't have the orders that initiated the Silver Star. Well, the problem was that my Silver Star didn't get approved until 34 years after the action in Vietnam. So these orders are fairly rare someplace. I just got a letter back from the people who keep all the records. They couldn't find anything, and I'm just understanding that they will not accept my actual certificate for the Silver Star, which I have upstairs in my room. They want the orders that initiated the Silver Star certificate, and I'm trying to get somebody to help me because I don't understand why they won't accept the Silver Star certificate. Okay.
Okay, James, if you could do this, first of all, my condolences on your wife, and and I, for your sake, I hope that you stick around for a good long time. But with that in mind, if you could just call us at 717-603-4980, 717-603-4980, regarding your award and your situation with Arlington. There's a good chance that we can help with that, and we certainly do that on a regular basis for all our veterans. So if you could just do that, 717-603-4980. Okay, James? And we'd like to talk to you about that and see if we can be of assistance. And I sure appreciate your service, sir. Thank you. All right, star 3 to get in the queue. Next call, please.
Sir, we have Tom from Camp Hill with a question about detention facilities.
Okay, Tom, go ahead.
Good evening, Congressman. Thank you very much for hosting tonight's town hall meeting. My question is, during the last administration, after 30 years of housing immigration cases at the York Detention Center, that agreement came to an end, unfortunately, and there's jobs that were lost in the area, and Central Pennsylvania played less of a role in immigration enforcement. Most recently, ICE has purchased a few facilities in Pennsylvania, and they're trying to convert those into detention facilities, and the governor has vowed to block it however he can. What can be done to ensure that the governor is not able to block it and we're able to support President Trump and the current administration with the immigration enforcement efforts, unlike what happened a few years ago?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tom. Again, I guess I understand to a certain extent the governor's aversion, but ICE is a customer just like any company is a customer, just like any individual could be a customer to do a land purchase, a land building purchase, to buy some land to build a building on and what have you. And those come down to local government decisions. And if the local government decides that they want that facility and the homeowner or the landowner or the facility owner wants to go and sell that and make that arrangement, make that deal, so to speak, that's where that will fall. The governor can apply political pressure, I suppose, on the elected officials or what have you in that location, but it's really up to them whether they want to do it or not, or whether they choose to approve it or not. So ICE, just like any other customer, has the ability to purchase facilities, and operate facilities as long as the local government approves them. The state really doesn't have any say in it. Now, I'm sure if it's if there are sensitivities regarding the department, any department at the state, whether it's transportation, whether it's environmental protection, what have you, I imagine that the state could make it difficult for the federal government to receive those permits, like let's just say a highway occupancy permit or something like that. they can make it difficult so that any agency or any individual just decides the deal's not worth it, can't wait any longer, what have you, and walks away from the potential deal. I hope that doesn't happen. Look, what Immigration and Customs Enforcement is trying to do is to make sure that everybody's rights are respected, everybody's due process is respected, and everybody is kept safe, both the community and the people that they seek to detain for adjudication, and if so required, deportation. But they have requirements to fulfill within the law on how to house them, how long to house them, where to house them, so on and so forth. That those requirements are trying to be met so that all this can be done as appropriate. And quite honestly, I think it's disingenuous of anyone to say that, well, we just don't want that happening anywhere in Pennsylvania, so that Pennsylvania becomes a harbor for people that are in the country illegally. I don't think that's good for our communities. I don't think it's good for the people that are here illegally. I certainly don't think it's good for law enforcement. And so all we need, again, is a little cooperation. But these are generally local decisions. I would say this: if we do find out that the state government is politically trying to stand in the way of what is a lawful action and an appropriate action, we'll certainly reach out to the governor's office and see if we can get some relief and see if we can get some cooperation. And hopefully that's not the case. I sure hope that the governor's not going to stand in the way of law enforcement and safety for our communities and our Commonwealth. But that really is kind of the answer, Tom. So I appreciate the question, and I hope that answers it for you. *3 to get in the queue. Okay, next caller, please.
Sir, we have Steve from Camp Hill with a question on Iran.
Okay, Steve. Steve, go ahead, sir.
Good evening. I'm a veteran, and you're a veteran, and a couple of days ago, the Secretary Hegseth said that we're not going to give any quarter to Iranian troops, and as far as I'm aware, that's a war crime. So what do you have to say about that, sir?
I think I didn't see the comment. I'm just going to take your word for the context and the comment itself. I can honestly say I didn't see it. I think essentially what he's saying is we're not going to pull back on the operation until the operation's finished. And, I think they've been expertly targeting military-only targets. Unfortunately, there's likely some collateral damage, but I think they're doing the United States military with the precision that only it can impose, is acting with the utmost caution to minimize civilian casualties and to pick only bellicose military and otherwise terrorist regime targets that are used to either terrorize Iran citizens or the rest of the world. But what I take from that comment, so to speak, if it were, is that we're going to continue the mission, and we're not going to be persuaded to stop until the mission is completed. And I think, generally speaking, as a theme, the time to negotiate was prior to all this happening, and the president gave both public and private statements in this regard, letting everyone know around the world that he was interested in negotiating some kind of diplomatic settlement with Iran, but Iran was recalcitrant. And I'm not sure, but I suspect you've heard the reports that they said they absolutely were not going to give up and were not going to quit pursuing their nuclear proliferation capability. Nuclear arms in the hands of irrational theological terrorists is very dangerous for the world. And so now that we've embarked on this way of remediating the situation, I think the Secretary's letting Iran and the combatants know that it's not going to stop until it's over. And I think it's kind of a sign to them to lay down their arms, or potentially, you're going to be in harm's way, especially if you're associated with one of these facilities or one of these capabilities. That's my take on the issue. And like I said, I'm taking you at your word. I did not see or hear the comments or the context, but I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you very much. *3 to get in the queue. Next call, please.
Sir, we have Rebecca from Middle Paxton with a comment.
Okay, Rebecca. Yes, ma'am.
Steve, I just want to say that we appreciate everything you're doing, and it's good to see you around town, and you have a lot of supporters around here.
Well, thanks, Rebecca. Nothing else on your mind? I mean, that we can, that I can answer for you?
No, I just wanted a positive comment. I'm taking notes, so.
I sure appreciate it, and know that we're always here. If you do have a question or something that we can help with, we want to be able to do that. I'm your liaison between, you and the federal government. So, we can oftentimes get you the answers even if we don't have them directly. So anything that comes up, please don't fail to reach out. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Again, *3 for the next question or comment, please.
Sir, we have Cheryl from Harrisburg with a question on Social Security.
Okay, Cheryl, go ahead.
I'm 66. I'm a senior, and I'm wondering why Social Security is going to run out in a couple of years. Why aren't they working on it instead of putting it on the back burner? A lot of us rely on Social Security.
Yes, Cheryl, you're absolutely right. And, and of course, all of us under penalty of law, if we get a paycheck, have to pay into Social Security. So when we say it's an entitlement, it's not a bad word because you're entitled to it because you've paid into it. And of course, if you don't pay into it, you're going to be in trouble with the law. That having been said, Cheryl, unfortunately, and this isn't coming from me. This comes from the Social Security trustees. So there's a whole other organization that, aside from Congress, that administers the Social Security program. And according to them, I'm not sure exactly what the date of default will be, but the Social Security Trust Fund is running out of money just because it's a simple math equation. There's more people receiving their benefit than paying in. And of course, when it was originally envisioned, there were a lot more people paying in to the few that were taking out, and it's a simple math equation that no longer works. Now, I would say this. You're right, Cheryl. We have failed as a legislature and as a government to address this issue, which is looming. But I will tell you, it's a political, it's a political grenade or landmine because even if you discuss it in any way, and look, even if you don't discuss it, probably just from discussing it on this call, there will be ads on the TV about, Representative Perry wants to cut your Social Security, and none of my actions have ever led to that, and none of my statements have ever led to that. But even discussing it, because it's such a political hot button issue, that's what happens. And so members of Congress are reluctant to deal with it, both sides, both Republicans and Democrats. Now, it's a simple math equation, and some people want to raise taxes, and some people want to change the benefit structure. I think that there is a solution set to this, but as long as it's politically toxic, I don't know how we're ever going to get to it. I do think that there's a reasonable political solution to it so that we can safeguard it for future generations without imperiling those that are receiving their Social Security or about to receive their Social Security. I can tell you one story that vexed me, and I know exactly how I voted. If you notice, oftentimes on a paycheck, if you're receiving one, it'll say OASI, and it's a deduction from your paycheck. That's because Social Security, when originally named, was Old Age Survivors Insurance, and that's the deduction for Social Security. Now, there's also Social Security Disability. Social Security Disability years ago was going bankrupt. It was out of money. And so what they did was they took out of when we had a vote in Congress to do this, to take money out of the Old Age Survivors Insurance Fund and transfer it to the Disability Fund. Now, I voted no on it. It passed anyhow. Here's the travesty. Well, they took the money out of the Old Age Survivors Insurance Fund and didn't change any of the equations or any of the eligibility requirements on the Disability Fund. So a fund that was going bankrupt, due to the equation, so to speak, was given more money stolen from the old age survivors insurance fund, but nothing in the equation changed. So, the same bankruptcy that occurred before is just going to continue, and now you have both systems that are, in peril. But I voted no on that. It passed anyhow, and that's unfortunate, but those are some of the things we deal with in Congress. But Cheryl, you're absolutely right, and unfortunately, I think it's going to have to head to a crisis before both sides will come to a conclusion. I guess maybe one final thought. I remember when Speaker McCarthy was the speaker, he invited all Democrats and all Republicans to the auditorium to discuss Social Security and Medicare, and basically told everybody, Democrat and Republican, that we needed to get together and try and solve the equation. And at the time, the ranking member on the Budget Committee, who was from Pennsylvania, basically went up and with the speaker, and said, we're not going to be assisting you in dealing with this issue because it had become just so partisan. And that's where the issue for that term died, which is unfortunate, but that's where we are. It's going to take a bipartisan solution. Unfortunately, I think it's going to have to get closer to catastrophe before that happens. And so that's kind of where we stand. It's not a great explanation, but I think it's a truthful one, Cheryl. Again, press *3 to get in the queue. And next caller, please.
Sir, we have Todd from Hershey with a question about fraud.
Okay, Todd. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I was just wondering that with all the healthcare, Medicare fraud in the states, and it seems like the politicians are complicit with the fraud, and it takes like a private citizen to uncover it. So I was seeing, what about Pennsylvania? Is it the same thing where all politicians are complicit, which are probably gaining financially from it, or, and have to wait for some individual to uncover it, or is there any task force or anyone assigned to look into fraud in Pennsylvania? Healthcare, Medicare.
Todd, thank you so much for the call. And I don't know if it's specific to Pennsylvania. You might be aware that the president just appointed the vice president to be in charge of what essentially is an anti-fraud task force. And I think there was just an announcement yesterday about his efforts in that regard. But it's not Pennsylvania specific, obviously. It's just anywhere in the country. I think they obviously will look at Pennsylvania. I also know that Dr. Oz, if you remember, who was on TV and ran for the United States Senate from Pennsylvania a couple of years ago, he is also looking at fraud, Medicaid and Medicare fraud particularly, and that also includes in Pennsylvania. I would hope that some of the political leaders are not involved. I know that there's been a lot of the spotlight put on one particular state where Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison are the governor and the Attorney General. I don't know what the future of that investigation is, if they will be implicated in that or not. It's sure, we had a hearing on it. And I was in the Oversight Committee. I was at the hearing. I got to ask questions of the governor and the Attorney General, who essentially said they have been trying to seek out the fraud and they were unaware of any fraudulent activities. I would say that it appears, at least regarding the Attorney General, that they were aware and potentially complicit. Unfortunately, it's very frustrating for our constituents, my bosses, you, Todd, and me, myself personally, when we go to the Department of Justice, who's, the law enforcement agency, and ask a particular question such as, is person X under investigation for fraud? If they are, what would normally be the answer is we can't comment on ongoing investigations. And so you don't really get a good sense whether there actually is an investigation, if the person you're talking to is involved in the investigation in any way, or is the point of the investigation or just associated with it, or where it's headed, or how fast it's getting there. it's very frustrating to just wait and wait and wait. But I understand and I agree with you. It seems like, independent journalists, if we want to call them that, have been able to uncover much of this stuff where, the authorities should be working on this day and night. But I would also say this, much of the money that we send from the federal government for these programs, and let's just take Medicare or Medicaid or different social services, whether that's for child care or some kind of, health care for infirm people where they have caregivers or something like that. Much of that, if not all of it, is administered by the states themselves. So we send the money with a basic set of guidelines and then leave it up to the states to determine who's eligible and to police up kind of, their fraud situation, thinking that, they have an incentive to do that because the more that they clean up the fraud, the more money they have on the truly needy. But sometimes apparently that incentive isn't enough, and I think, we're going to see more and more of that. But I think that there is a task force that has been set up. It's, as I understand, it's being led by the vice president. I know that the agencies like the one that Dr. Oz is in charge of are also conducting simultaneous investigations in the various states. I sure hope Pennsylvania is not one of them, but, unfortunately, I probably wouldn't be surprised if it comes up at some point in Pennsylvania. So I understand, Todd. Look, we can save literally tens of billions of dollars a year at the federal level just on fraud. And almost every single person, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, left, right, in the middle, don't vote at all, don't care, cares about fraud and wants something done about it. It's one of those, 90-10 issues. And unfortunately, we just don't, I think we haven't spent enough time on it at the federal level because we depend on the states to do it. And in some cases, they haven't done a great job. All right, moving on. Thank you very much for the question, Todd. Star 3 to get in the queue. Next question, please.
Sir, we have Stan from Harrisburg with a question about the VA.
Okay, Stan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman. You're a veteran. I'm a veteran. First, I'd like to say is I get excellent care here at the Cumberland Valley VA clinic and at the Lebanon VA Center. Past administrations and the current administration seems like they are interested in privatizing the VA. As you know, the sole purpose of the VA is to take care of veterans. I receive, excellent care. I've never had any problems getting any care I need or any appointments I need in our area. And as you know, the outsourcing, when you can't get to, outsourcing is okay, but you support the total gutting of the VA and getting rid of it, because I don't feel comfortable if I have to go to a for-profit hospital where their only concern is making money, if they totally get rid of the VA, instead of going to see a specialist or a doctor at the VA, when I know they're only there to take care of me and my fellow veterans. I really, how do you feel about that, sir?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. First of all, let me thank you for your service, and I'm glad to hear the report. The VA in past years has, in some cases, performed less than admirably. I'm happy to report that the Lebanon VA and the associated outpatient clinics in our area get the highest marks, some of the highest marks of any VA in the country, and I think it's a testimony to the people in our area that provide the service to our veterans, and we're sure proud to tout their record publicly. That having been said, I don't think there's any discussion that I know of to privatize the VA. I do know that maybe you're talking about the Choice Act, which gave the ability for some specialized services that aren't available to veterans to be handled outside of the VA system. Now, the VA is not perfect, I would say that, and I'm glad that you get excellent care, and I can't ever say that, that it's always been perfect. I mean, I occasionally get some complaints, but we're trying to make sure that every veteran across the country has access to care that they need. And while we live in central Pennsylvania in pretty close proximity. I mean, if you got to drive, from Harrisburg to Lebanon, that's a bit of a haul, right? And it's going to take you a little while. But literally, some of our veterans, especially out in the western states, will drive hundreds and hundreds of miles for an appointment and to get the care that they need, and where it could be potentially provided for them by a non-VA practitioner in their own town and save them the hundreds and hundreds of miles of a trip or a long wait. What we were trying to do is make sure that the veteran let's be clear, the VA was set up to be the premier health care in the country, specifically for veterans, for those who had borne the battle, as Abraham Lincoln said, right? And so that's what it was set up for. But even so, there are challenges of geography and challenges of specialty, right? And so to deal with those challenges, we set up this choice program so that all veterans can get timely health care closest to them, even if sometimes the VA doesn't provide it either in close proximity or at the appropriate time. But I know of no discussions to privatize the VA. And, look, Stan, I'll make this commitment to you. I don't see the VA Secretary Collins very often, but I served with him here in Congress. I will ask him that on your behalf the very next time I see him. But I can tell you legitimately, I have not heard any discussions whatsoever of that being, a policy provision or a goal of, quite honestly, this administration or any past administration, Democrat or Republican. We're just trying to make sure that we provide the premier care timely to veterans, and in the closest proximity. So I thank you for the question. I would just add this one thing. I'm trying to get this thing, the Treat PTSD Act, into all the VAs. There are 11 of them across the country that offer that service to our veterans who are dealing with post-traumatic stress injuries. I don't see why it's only 11. It's proven 85% effective with no side effects, no known side effects, and we lose, upwards of 20, maybe 22 veterans a day to suicide, and oftentimes PTSI-related, symptoms. So the VA is not perfect. We continue to work on it. That's been my challenge, and we're working on it as we speak with the VA committee right here in Congress. But thank you again for your service, Stan. I hope that answers your question. Again, press *3 if you've got a question. Next caller, please.
Sir, we have Barbara from Millersburg with a question about executive orders.
Hey, Barbara. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Scott.
Barbara. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank you for your service and everything you've done and continue to do. And I have a question about the executive orders. Now, we went through this when President Trump was in office last time. He made such great executive orders. Nothing was codified, and Biden undid every one of them. How many are you guys going to get codified for him before the end of this term?
Well, I'm going to try and get the answer right now of how many we passed in the House of Representatives, Barbara. And look, I know this answer is going to fall short of satisfactory to you as it does to me. So we passed them in the House. We have the ability. We have a slim majority. Right now, I think our majority is 1, depending on attendance each day. And I say that not because people just don't show up for work, but people get sick or what have you, and they have, they don't always make it. But so even with a slim majority of 1, and I'm going to try and get you the number, I think 50. So we've passed 50 pieces of legislation in the House of Representatives. But as you understand, Barbara, to codify means it has to pass the Senate as well and then get a signature from the president. And as you probably know, the Senate is a place where, under the current paradigm, requires 60 votes. And unfortunately, there's such acrimony and discord even if they like the policy, I think there's such acrimony with some of the members towards the president that they won't vote to pass those pieces of legislation that have moved through the House, even though in the House oftentimes they are passed with a bipartisan vote. And so the holdup, unfortunately, like I said, this is an answer that's not going to be satisfactory to you, Barbara. I get it. It's lacking. But we can pass things in the House. They won't be codified unless they're passed in the House and the Senate. And right now, that's the holdup. And even though we have the majority is not what's required. We need more than the majority in the Senate. We need 60. And I suspect, you sound very knowledgeable, Barbara. I suspect you know that. So, but it's 50 in the House, and we need some push in the Senate. I don't know where each individual member has voted. So, to be clear, I don't know where Senator McCormick or Senator Fetterman has voted on each one of them. If you need that running list, our office can provide that, or you can call the offices of each senator and find out, for yourself if you don't want to trust us to that or don't believe us. But that's the answer I have for you, Barbara. And I wish it were not so, but that's kind of where we are. We've done our part here on 50 of them, but we can't get them through there if they won't help out. So again, press *3. We're still chugging along here. And next caller, please.
Sir, we have Kenneth from Wellsville with a question about gun rights.
Hey, Kenneth, go ahead, sir.
Hello, you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Scott Perry. I want to tell you I appreciate your service, and all my family is proud service members. And want to know how you feel on the gun rights. And I was also wanting to know how you are on APAC, and if you're not going to take any more money from them regarding, future endeavors. And how you feel on Israel. And basically, I don't think that this whole thing on Iran is what we're being told. I feel it, I don't want to say certain things and say I'm anti-Semitic and be all like that, because that's the wrong, terminology for who I am. Just like most people would call me, what do you want to say, a lover of the World War II Austrian painter, if you will. And I believe wholeheartedly he should have finished his job, because then we wouldn't be in the situation we are now. And what do you feel on what I just said? And if I just said something anti-Semitic, is just tell me how you feel.
Okay, I'm going to tell you how I feel, Kenneth. We're going to start with your first issue, which is gun rights. I support completely the Constitution, the Second Amendment, your right to bear arms. I also support, even though we haven't been able to get it through the House of Representatives, I'm a co-sponsor of the reciprocity bill, because I think you ought to be able to defend yourself in the United States as long as you're a lawful law-abiding citizen, and you lawfully, own a firearm and conduct and comport yourself that way. And just to let everybody know, and I'm proud of it, when I was in the State House, I was the prime author of a thing called the Castle Doctrine, where previously in Pennsylvania, you had a duty to retreat even in your own home, where you're being assaulted, or where your life or the life of your family or somebody else was in jeopardy by somebody that came into your home. And, I just found that outrageous. We have the right, in my opinion, to defend ourselves as Americans. And so that's where I stand on gun rights. Regarding Israel, look, I will just tell you that I just actually returned from Israel a few weeks ago now, and it is our greatest and, quite honestly, literally our only real democratic ally in the region, and we have great interest not only in the region but around the globe. And so I'm a strong supporter of Israel. Now, Israel's a sovereign nation, and so are we. I don't think that that we should ever take our cues from Israel. I will tell you this too. When I was in Israel on official business, I had an opportunity to sit right in front of the prime minister, which I did, and I asked him questions, regarding our two countries and our relationships. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I'm on the Select Committee on Intelligence. I asked him about what was pending in Iran, because during my visit there, the military buildup in and around that region of the world was occurring, and the negotiations were ongoing at that moment. And so I asked him about Iran and, Israel's position vis-a-vis America. And the prime minister told me the decision is up to your president. So I know there's a lot of, and look, I appreciate that. And that's the way it should be. We'll decide for America what we're going to do and what's in America's best interest. And certainly we like to have our allies, which include obviously Israel. But there's a lot of information or claims out there that says that, that President Trump or any American president does what Israel tells them to do. And I will tell you, from my experience and all the information that I get on a continual basis, I don't find any truth in that whatsoever. Do we collaborate? Absolutely, we do. I mean, we use their technology, they use ours, and I think it's a very important symbiotic relationship that benefits both nations as free, loving people that don't want to be at war. But I don't get any sense whatsoever that that Israel tells the United States what to do, and I will tell you, they certainly don't tell me what to do. Regarding any anti-Semitic comments, look, I just don't think that any of that stuff is helpful at all. We respect everybody's religion, and we just want to live peacefully among each other, and respect everybody's religious and strong-held faith beliefs. So I hope that answers your question, Kenneth. I appreciate your service, and I thank you for the opportunity. All right, we've got one more question to go. I think we're running out of time here, so who's next in the queue here, please?
Sir, we have Alexander from York with a question about Senate confirmation hearings.
Okay, Alexander, go ahead.
Hi there. I'll try to be brief. I watch every confirmation hearing that I can catch.
Yes, sir.
And I generally I have concerns about the judgment and the temperament and the overall fitness being demonstrated for the roles that are tied to national security, including the DHS and the DOD. So I'm concerned not just about qualifications, but also conduct, decision-making under pressure, issues like alcohol abuse that could impair judgment. Now, I understand that is handled at the Senate level. So my question for you is, what standards are actually enforced to ensure that these roles are filled by qualified, steady leadership? And where are those standards breaking down today?
Alexander, I appreciate the question. Like you said, it's handled at the Senate level. Now, I might have an opinion individual by individual, in discussion with senators that ask, or I might impart that information to them. I'm not sure that they really care what I think. I think they do their own due diligence, and I think you're seeing that play out. As you know, the DHS, the new nominee for secretary, is under confirmation now, and you said you watch them, so I'm assuming you've probably seen at least some of that and maybe others. Well, I will tell you, whether it's Supreme Court justices or members of individual cabinets, I've had reservations. I felt better about some than others. Unfortunately, I don't have any more of a voice in it than you do. I'm a constituent of my United States senators, just like you are. And, when I feel appropriate, I weigh in, and I imagine they weigh my opinion just like they would yours, Alexander, if you were to call in. And I think it's generally perceived that a president, whether we agree with the selection or not, has the right to choose his or her own members of their team. And of course, the accountability comes with that. If they perform poorly, then that's going to be seen, and the consequences are going to be out there, and and there's going to be an accountability for that as the term wears on, and that's the only opportunity that you kind of get, other than the president, him or herself, losing faith with that individual and relieving them. So at this point, I'm satisfied. I would tell you, I would like to see a national security advisor. I respect Secretary Rubio, but I think there's a lot of things on his plate right now, and I think that's a position that could be filled, and should be filled, and I've expressed that concern. Of course, that's not a Senate confirmation fill anyhow. That's just a selection by the president. But these are weighty positions of import. I would say at this point, I'm satisfied with the Secretary of the Department of Defense or the Department of War, if you prefer. I am satisfied with the other secretaries of national security import. Would I do some things differently? Absolutely. I mean, none of us get to agree. We don't agree 100% with everybody, but it seems like things are pretty well in hand, unless there's something that I don't know that is a surprise. Like I said, there's always things that I'm going to find some disagreement with, and I will let you know, Alexander, when that's the case. I write specifically to that individual, that cabinet secretary, if you would, with a specific question and a demand for an answer on a specific issue. Like I'll give you, for instance, there's a flotilla headed to Cuba right now that is supported by the Communist Party of China through America. I think that's subversive activity, and I think that's a potential national security issue. And so I've expressed those concerns to the appropriate cabinet secretaries, and I'm waiting on an answer on that particular issue. So I understand what you're saying. I agree with you, and I hope I've explained my position, and I think I understand yours. Ladies and gentlemen, we got one more. Oh, awesome. Okay, last question. One more, please.
We have Lucinda from Mount Holly Springs with a question on the SAVE Act.
Okay, Lucinda, go ahead.
Good evening.
Yes,
my
ma'am.
question is, from what I've heard with the SAVE Act, if it is passed, will we need to, as U.S. citizens, re-register to vote? And if so, what is going to be acceptable identification? Because I understand a regular driver's license will not work. It will have to be probably the U.S. passport. I've even heard that real ID is not suffice.
Okay, so you will not have to re-register. It's when you do register. So if you're already registered, you won't have to re-register. If you change your registration, let's say you move somewhere, then you would have to provide the documentation, proof of citizenship. But you will not. That's one of the myths about this thing. It is, you are not required to re-register. So there's not going to be this mass requirement for everybody who's currently registered to vote to go re-register to vote. But if you are registering to vote, from that point forward, you will have to provide proof of citizenship. So that's one of the myths about that. And I just hope that proof of citizenship can include a lot of things, like a real ID, a passport, a government issued identification with their place of birth. So that's what's required for proof of citizenship. But that's only if you're registering to vote. If you're already registered, then you would only provide something that identifies you as you at the time of voting. If the Save America Act, as currently written, and I say that importantly because look, it's in the Senate now. It might pass, it might not pass. It might be some kind of a negotiation which might change the tenets of the bill. So let's be careful here not to get out over our skis here. Let's see what this thing finally ends up as. But there are a lot of myths about it, and that if you're hearing that you will be forced to re-register, that is one of those myths, Lucinda. So I hope that answers your question. All right, I think, is that it? Okay, we're out of time, folks. So I got to wrap up this town hall. Thanks so much for joining. It's been a great event. Lots of questions. I appreciate your input. We're going to do another one shortly. Again, if you'd like to get on our update list, please press *6 now. And also, if you want to follow me on social media, any of the platforms, it's at Rep Scott Perry. I really appreciate your time tonight. If you didn't get to ask a question and still need an answer, please contact any one of our offices or send a note through our website, and we'll get you an answer just as soon as we can. If we can be of assistance with any federal issue whatsoever, also, please give us a shout. The contact numbers and email address are on all of our websites, perry.house.gov. All right, until the next time, thanks again. I hope you have a great, safe evening. God bless you all.